The Why Me Project, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
There are moments in my career, Holly, of 20 plus years in radio, where I could look back and say, I can't believe I had an opportunity to talk with, and you could insert a number of different names.
Yeah, for sure. I would say today's one of those days.
I remember being backstage, hoping to perhaps get a glimpse of the guys from Petra and Newsboys back in the late 90s, early zeros. And one of those guys we have an honor to speak with today. And Mr. Bob Hartman, my friend, how are you?
I'm good.
You're what the kids would say an OG of Petra, one of the originals.
Yes, I am.
Not the original, the founder.
We like to ask the skill testing question because we never know where it's going to go. And that is, who are you and where did you come from?
Well, I grew up in Ohio in a small town and started playing guitar when I was 13 years old and just really enjoyed it and had a band since I was 14. And when I got saved when I was 20 years old, God called me to go to a Bible school, a 2-year Bible school in Indiana. And that's where Petra began, at this Bible school. And we felt like there were people who were like we were, who had grown up with rock music and needed to hear a message through rock music rather than traditional church music. And so we played any place we could when we started out. And, never thought that over 50 years later, we'd still be out there.
Do you remember your first gig as Petra?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, It was in my high school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a very rare thing back in those days, even that a school would allow anything Christian. But the school had us come in and play. And that was, really quite the thing. I had been playing on that stage many times in after the game dances and so forth. But that's was the first time as a Christian that I stood on that stage and was able to give my testimony. That was, a special time.
You're going to be doing this cross-Canada tour, and you're going to be playing in churches, which nowadays seems like just a natural thing. What was it like back when you guys first started? Because I feel as though having rock music and having what Petra was, maybe not necessarily the church was all for that type of music.
Yeah, not so much. I remember my church got drums. It was like, what's happening?
Yeah, that's a really good point right there, because back in those days, a set of drums in a church was something you just really didn't see,
Yeah.
And people had a lot of bad teaching about music and thought that the beat itself was evil, that the beat, that rhythm was of the devil. And how could anyone think that? God created music, and we knew that, and we had to try to convince the church that there were different uses for music, and we weren't under the illusion that all the church people were going to love our music. That's not what it was for. We were using music as a tool. So we were successful in a lot of ways, but it took a long time for the church to come around.
I look at my kids, and they might recognize perhaps some Michael W. Smith or a Toby Mac or an Amy Grant, but I think even our generation and my kids' generation don't understand the impact that the likes of Petra has had. When I say the words pioneer, how does that resonate with you?
I've heard that before, for sure. And we were an early Christian rock band. I know God used us to plow a lot of ground, especially with the church.
It's hard to be the trailblazer, as they say, because, You have to cut through a lot, and it's exhausting. To have gone through all the things you went through as a band, how were you able to stay together and in the various forms of Petra for so long? I mean, now you're back and doing the 50-year anniversary. What was your secret to the longevity of your group?
I think, there were several times where we asked God, do you still want us to do this?
Yeah.
Because there are lots and lots of ups and downs and lots of trials and tribulations. And, you just have to know, is this a trial and tribulation with God telling us it's over and it's time to stop? Or is it God testing us, testing our faith? And every time we asked God, he gave us a sign. He gave us an indication that we were doing the right thing and we should keep going. And I think when you have a ministry and God has used your ministry, it's very hard to walk away from it. You don't want to leave something that God still wants to use. That, I think, has kept us together more than anything, maybe.
When you think about when you're first recording, your first number of albums to where we are now, looking at your career, the change of technology and how things are so very different. Can you think back of when you first started doing it to where we are now and how things have changed?
When we first started, that was like a bucket list to me to do an album, to do a recording, to go in a recording studio and make an album.
Yeah.
That was like, for a musician, that was like, that was it, was, and now, we've been in the studio so many times that, it's like, okay, God, thank you,
Yeah.
But lots of technology obviously has changed. When we started out, there were, LPs, vinyl recordings, and there were also 8-track tapes.
Yes.
And you probably, if you know what an 8-track tape is, then you are pretty old yourself, probably.
Yes,
But,
I am.
Yeah. And so that was the early, and some of our music was actually on 8-track tapes.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those, but that would be a collector's item, I suppose. Vinyl came back. Maybe 8-tracks will come back.
You just never know. I mean, the quality was good.
Yeah. You know what the 8-track was known for, though, was like you get to the middle of a song, you'd be grooving, and then it'd stop and it'd change and go to the other side and finish the song on the other side. So you had to sit there and wait for it to change and interrupt your music grooving. But anyway, lots of technological changes. And obviously now we have digital music, and the whole music business has been changed by that. So for us as musician and as a ministry, that hasn't really changed what we do, because we're still trying to communicate Christ through our songs and through our music and our concerts. And so that's important for us to not be affected by all those changes and not be lured by different things that would draw us away from our, what God has called us to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, though, because I was going to say, in your 50-plus year career, everything has evolved and changed, but yet God hasn't changed. And you guys continue to impact a world, both the Christian world, but what about the secular world? Because there were times, and I'd hear interviews of people who would say, sometimes it was the secular world who brought us in, and we had great relationships with the non-Christians because we were getting shunned by the Christians. What was your relationship like with maybe those who didn't necessarily go to church?
Larry Norman used to say, I'm too religious for the rock people and too rock for the religious people. We found ourselves in that position quite a bit in those early days. One thing we did, a lot of people know Petra is a Christian band. And one of the reasons was during the 1980s, we would take our music and put together professional advertising for secular rock stations. We would put our music that fit their format completely, and they would play our advertising because we had paid for it, and it was a way to get to people listening to rock stations, and all of those people that ran those stations could hear the music and know it was good rock music, but they couldn't play it on their station. But they knew that Petra was a Christian rock band. And I think that really got a lot of notoriety among people who weren't Christians.
You guys were in an industry, too, where, I mean, the Christian industry still was fairly new in the 70s. And I think that maybe has changed, too. Do you ever look at some of the current artists and think, man, you guys have it easy? Like, we had to go through so much, and now you just release it.
That it's funny how younger people, now you guys are aware of the way the church was in those days, but there's a lot of young people who, if you tell them that churches were totally against rock music, they were like, really? They don't even realize that, because things have changed so much and so drastically.
Yeah.
And the church has relaxed a lot about music. And I think that's a really good thing, because it's a bad thing when we have biases, when we have prejudice about something like a style of music. Culturally, God wants us to relate. He wants us to be different than the world, but he wants us to be able to relate to the world on some kind of level. I don't believe God wants us to be so, heavenly minded, we're no earthly good. And so Petra, we've tried to maintain a very high standard wherever we go, of not only our music, but everything about us. And you mentioned secular people. Well, we have worked with many secular people through our touring and so forth. Yeah. In other words, we might have a secular company provide sound and lights for our tour. The way we treated every single person on that crew was a testimony to God and to Christ and to God's love. And that's how we looked at it. We're in the world, and we're not of the world. And so we have brushed sleeves with the world many times, and look at those as opportunities to share the love of Christ and to share what it really means to be a Christian. We recently played at a club in Houston, Texas, and I don't even know why they decided to try Christian music, but they told us, the gal came in our dressing room and she said, you guys have changed our minds about what a Christian band is.
Wow.
We said, what do you mean? She said, the way you have treated us. And we just looked at each other like, what did we do? We just being ourselves. We just being ourselves. We don't look at ourselves as special people. We look at ourselves as privileged people who have been called into something we love to do, and do it for Christ.
I've been blessed to be in Christian radio for over 20 years, and Holly, the same thing. I do mornings, and there are some mornings at 4 a.m. when the alarm goes off. I'm like, why am I getting up? This is, it becomes sometimes a chore. How is it in a career of yours? I mean, do you ever feel it being mundane going on tour and being on stage and that, or is it considered a blessing to you?
It's always exciting when you have a gig. I've been a musician without a gig, and I know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I can remember being in the dressing room smiling, and the other band member saying, what are you so happy about? I said, we got a gig. Think about how many musicians are out there right now wishing they had a gig.
Yeah.
And that's, where the fun is. Now, getting to the gig, preparing for the gig, paying for equipment, and traveling and staying in hotels and being away from home, those are what you do in order to get to the gig.
Yeah.
But gig is the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where our opportunity is, and that's where our joy is. And we thank God for every time we get to be on stage, and thank God that there are actually people who want to hear us.
Speaking of God, I'm curious. You said that you became a Christian in your 20s. And
Yes.
so what was that moment that changed the trajectory for you instead of just doing music for the world to doing it for God?
When I became a Christian, I really needed to find out if there was a God or not. See, I had gone to church all the way through high school, but when I got out of high school, I really had doubts because it was a church that never talked about knowing Christ, being born again, never heard of that. We really, it was more of a social church.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if there was a God or not, but I had to find out. I knew I had to find out because, there was just too much at stake. I was ready to go my own way in life if there was no God. So, but I knew I had to find out. So it was a person who came to minister to me, actually came to witness to me. I asked him to come and talk to me about his experience as a Christian. He was from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. He was from the very beginnings of Chuck Smith's church. And he came and talked to me, and he said, I've planted the seed in you, and I hope it'll grow. And about 2 weeks later, I asked Christ into my life. I didn't know how to pray or anything. And God let me know that he was there, heard my prayer. He was real. And he began to work in my life. And it was an amazing thing for me to realize that there is actually a God who knew me and knew my life. And I wanted to share that through music. Music was what I loved. I loved to do. And that was when I began writing songs after becoming a Christian. And I finally felt like I have something to say. I can share this experience of Christ and knowing God. And so that's what motivated me in those days.
Before Holly gets to our why me question, I do ask this. So you're going to tour across Canada. What can we expect from a show? Are you going to stage dive? Is there can I be front row and ready to catch you as you take that jump?
No. First, we're all going to come out with our hover rounds, and we're going to motor around the stage for a minute.
Okay.
And one of us may fall out of our hover round and break a hip.
Oh, no.
So we're going to have medics on call on the side of the stage.
Perfect.
And so we will certainly give a very age-appropriate show.
I love it.
So no hoverboards. Okay. Okay. Now I'm just disappointed. Oh, goodness. All right. So why me moment? I mean, you've been able to be a part of Petra from day one. You were part of Two Guys from Petra. Now you guys are going on your 50th anniversary. Someone looking at that resume would say, surely someone like this has never had a valley. It's all mountaintops. Do you mind sharing a story of where you had asked God, why me?
So I mentioned Bible school.
Yeah.
When I became a Christian and I went to Bible school, I became part of a program they called the Paul and Timothy program. And it was a go to school in the morning and work at the church in the afternoon. And when I got there, I found out that my tuition was not paid for by the work I did at the church. that I still had to pay tuition to the school. And I was dirt poor. I was broke. I had just finished college. I had just turned down a really good job off to go to Bible school. And that's when I sat alone in a sanctuary and wept before God and said, God, why me? Why did I do this? Why did you have me turn down that job offer to come over here and be a poor student? I said to God, I can't make it on this money. I'm going to go belly up. I'm going to go broke, which is a really dumb thing to tell God. And, it's like I was saying to God, I'll show you, God, I can't make it on this. And God showed me he was a lot bigger than what I imagined. And somehow, and I can't even tell you how, there was always enough. Never in abundance, but always enough. And I think I learned from that what it means to trust God, really trust God. I mean, we say we trust God, but when you are out of everything, when you have no earthly person to turn to bail you out, you have nothing to hold you up, and you can only look to God. We have a song, it's called Right Place. You're in the right place when all you have to do is look to God.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's not always easy or comfortable in those situations. I wish it was. Why? It's like, why is it so hard? But yet God is still walking with us in those moments.
It's definitely very uncomfortable, but God loves for us to be uncomfortable to learn to trust him. He loves to pull all of our things that we rely on away and test our faith, make us cry out to him. He loves that, and he loves to prove himself. So whatever we're going through, that's one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
I remember listening to younger artists. They said that they love to be able to pick the brains of those who have come before them. And I think with your wealth of knowledge, I'd be remiss to not finish off with this question. Advice, maybe it's life advice for artists, maybe it's life advice just for us. Some sort of wisdom that you could bestow upon us as we wrap up the interview today.
Okay, well, I've been saying the same thing, the same answer to that question, for forever, as long as I can remember. I tell people, be faithful in small things, and God will give you bigger things. People come up to me all the time and say, I want to do what you do. How can I do what you do? And they see the lights and the big sound and the big crowd, and they didn't see when we played for, a few people in a little coffee house, or when we played for free, or when we thought we were going to get a love offering and it ended up being a like you a lot offering. So, those are the things that build you. And when you're faithful in small things, God gives you bigger things. So just be faithful to do whatever you do to whoever you have to do it with. In other words, if it's just be a part of your church's music, or teach a Bible study or a Sunday school class, or do something where you can be faithful in small things. And you will be surprised and shocked what happens when you are available to God.
Yeah, that's good. I had a chance to see you for your 30th anniversary. Excited for your 50th. The next time we'll talk, we'll have to do this for your 60th. Brother, we appreciate you taking your time. Petraband.com. And Bob Hartman, my friend, thank you for taking some time and sharing your heart today.
Well, thank you guys for talking.
I think if you were to put a checklist on the bucket list of people that we needed to talk to in our lives, you could just put another one off that list now.
Yeah, and that concludes Whammy Project Forever.
Yeah, that's it. We're done.
It was a good run.
Yeah.
I so love Bob's heart for the ministry of music. How it's not just the music, but how they act, how they treat people. It just seems so all encompassing. And sometimes I wonder, looking at some of the artists now, which, I mean, no one's coming to my head or anything, but there seems to be a different vibe. And I wonder if the more mature Christian industry has taken away from that element of ministry and serving, just because that's how things evolve. What would it be like if we served God in all that we do with humility and a heart of service?
You hear an artist say, I can't, the first time that they ever heard themselves on the radio.
Yeah.
Think about them being not only Christians, but a different genre.
Yeah.
And no Christian radio that would really play it. It's just, they've paved the way. They've been through a lot. And it was just really a great opportunity to talk to Bob today. I wanted to call him Mr. Hartman the whole time.
Yeah. You could have.
I could have. It'd be like, just call me Bob.
Yeah, as they celebrate 50th anniversary. So incredible and honored that we get to be a part of this experience too.
Yeah, and we're so very thankful that you get to share that opportunity with us. Whether you're following us on the socials, Facebook or Twitter or TikTok, yeah, we're there. YouTube, you could you could subscribe. We're big. We're making small progressions.
Time.
No, we're making small progressions for 2024 to become big time.
We're just being faithful in the little things.
That's really good. Where'd you hear that from?
I don't know, some wise person.
Yeah, right.
Oh, goodness. Also, guys, don't forget, you can always check us out at faithstrongtoday.com.